Well, welcome back to the Digital Handshake Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Jorgensen. I'm actually joined here with Dr. John Cook from Chicago, Illinois. John, pleasure to have you on the show.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's fun to be here. Always enjoy coming to Dallas.
Fantastic. Well, I think it'd be fun just to kind of get to know you a little bit better. You've been practicing plastic surgery for many years there in Chicago. I understand you did your training there at Northwestern. Tell us what drove you to be a plastic surgeon.
Fell in love with it in medical school. So all my friends in college thought I was going to be a writer. And that's a wonderful thing. Mostly family influences. We happen to know a phenomenal heart surgeon and a phenomenal neurosurgeon. He was actually the first person to separate Siamese twins joined at the head.
Oh, wow.
So I got really interested in that. And I thought, gosh, I'm going to be a heart surgeon or a neurosurgeon. That's when I went to medical school at Northwestern. That was my assumption. And just by dumb luck, as with many things in life, there's a note-taking thing, because not everybody shows up. So, one person from the class takes the notes and then does it. And then you have to present it to the guy who's actually giving the lecture. And it was a cool lecture on plastic surgery. So I kind of did a little extra work on it and brought it to the person who was a wonderful plastic surgeon named P. Harold Griffith, who was the chairman at Northwestern at the time. And he said, wow, you did a good job. You're one who just come and join me in the operating room. Well, I took him up on it. It was fun. And so then I kind of fell in love with it. And so I took every clerkship in medical school, because you do the clinical rotations, and I turned it into a mini plastic surgery rotation. And so I always found a way to sneak off, and I got to know some amazing people. And then I subscribed to the journals, and I'd go to the meetings for the residents. And so that was it. There was just no question about it.
Well, it's kind of lucky and serendipitous that you found your passion kind of early in sort of your, call it training to be a doctor, that you said, hey, this is my path, and that's my passion. I think it'd be fun for our audience to learn a little bit more about you besides being a doctor. What are things that you like to do, your hobbies, interests, a little bit about kind of, Dr. John outside of the operating room.
Yeah, well, maybe my problem is I have too many interests, but I think it actually helps me in my practice and it helps my patients. I've always been super interested in art and aesthetics. So, and I tell the residents that train, I say, when you go to a meeting, if in a city, spend time at the art museum, you may learn more there than you will at the meeting. And I do that myself, and it's true because the artists have a special eye. I just happen to be really lucky because the parents I had, we got to know a number of artists who were friends, and so it always was an interest. My mother and my dad too. So that just really sharpened my eye, and that's just something I love, is anything to do with that and certain places. I happen to love going to Paris, so that's like oxygen for me.
Do you love painting, sculptures? Like what particular piece of art or all art?
I'm a nut about Caravaggio. My goal is to see everything he ever painted. But I also admire, what's going on now. I think it's really interesting. Today I'm going to wander down to the Dallas Art Museum because there's a surrealism exhibit that I really want to see. So, and my wife's along with me, so it's going to be fun because she has a very artistic eye as well. So we love that. I love languages. The first one I learned a long time ago was German, actually. And then probably again, because of my mother's influence, I got very interested in French and kind of put it aside, but then became obsessed with it. So I went to a little language institute in Paris a week at a time. I couldn't do more than that because I'm a surgeon. Duolingo for me is a godsend because I'm busy. And so I'm up to 1,925 days in a row.
Wow.
Doing Espanol Duolingo.
KBN.
So it's fun. And, I get to the point, especially with the French now, when I go to Paris, I'll pick up, books at the bookstore and bring them back and read them in French and that sort of thing.
You speak multiple languages. You love art. You love visiting great, world-renowned museums and galleries. You've been a plastic surgeon now for, over 20 years. You just mentioned you're married, family. Let's transition back to the practice, if we will. You're on the Digital Handshake. One of our objectives and sort of missions is to help plastic surgeons create that warm handshake with their audience, with their patients. And, how do they make that sort of first impression their strongest asset? At your practice there in Chicago, what are you guys doing in terms of your marketing, whether it's social media, whether it's website, YouTube? Is there anything in particular right now that's a focus from your marketing? Because we recognize within aesthetic plastic surgery, it's not something covered by insurance. It's call it retail medicine. So you have to be doing something to get the word out for patients to find you.
Well, quite honestly, my best marketing is my existing patients
Mm,
and just building a very special relationship with it. At this point in my practice, the majority of patients who come to me, either they're coming back for something else or they're friends. And that's just a beautiful place to be.
yeah.
And it's really ultimately, it takes a while, but that's organic marketing right there, I guess, if you want to put it in those terms. In other words, you're building relationships. If you try to sacrifice too much for the short term, I'm not sure that's going to work. I always give that advice to the people I train. And, what they do with it is up to them, of course. But I just think that's very powerful. I do think it's really helpful to do the other things, and I'm trying to make a better effort with it.
Mhm.
I have some really wonderful people on my team who help me, but I'm probably frustrating to them because finding the time is tricky. I like coming here for that reason because it enables me to,
Yeah.
to get a fair amount done. I think if I had advice again to, say, a young plastic surgeon, it would be yourself and don't spend too much time trying to figure out what's popular because sometimes what's popular isn't necessarily the best thing for your patients.
Yeah. Well, within the practice now, is there a particular sort of trend or something that you're seeing that's whether it's surprising you or something that you think is quite novel or something of interest to you right now within sort of, the evolution of this specialty called plastic surgery?
Your own story is your story, and I
Yeah.
don't want to generalize, but I will say in my practice, we're largely oriented towards facial rejuvenation.
Mhm.
It's always been a deep interest of mine. I have some other tricks I do in other areas, but I just love facelifts in particular. What's been great for us is we do the vast majority of them under local anesthesia, which is a huge thing.
Right.
Because that's one of the real blockers for people is, and for good reason, especially if you're a little older, there are risks to it. Plus, it's kind of yucky. Sometimes the worst part of the recovery is the general anesthesia, not the lift itself. So, I mean, this has certainly been a thing that has been very wonderful for our practice. I love doing them. We do a lot of them. Again, if I was to advise someone newer to the game, I guess, you find something you're really passionate about and be serious. And you got to put in a lot of time to get good at it. There's no instant anything, at least if it's going to be worthwhile.
Yeah. Well, I love the fact that you said, "Hey, my organic marketing has been word of mouth referrals, has been building personal relationships with my patients, and patients as they've aged, they've come back and they've asked for a facelift, perhaps when they may have come in for something else, maybe something more non-invasive, whether it's Botox or what have you, and so they've kind of graduated up sort of the ladder, if you will, of different types of procedures." Um, thinking back about sort of when you first got started in plastic surgery, how did you market your practice then before sort of like the internet and social media and, all these things that, the younger generations of plastic surgeons now have to tap into right out of the gate? I mean, for example, we just had an interview with a resident and she's already got like 35,000 followers on Instagram. I mean, she's already built this like social following. And so she has, been doing that almost as actively as like studying medicine. So for you, when you first got started, like, how did you market?
It's very different.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we didn't have social media. I think your best thing is that being patient and doing super, super good work, and it takes care of itself. Maybe I was lucky. Maybe I had certain people through my training who had faith in me. And so I then, when I started my practice, they referred patients to me. That certainly didn't hurt. And then you take good care of people. Ultimately, I think that's your most effective marketing. I'm not saying that social media isn't good. I think it is up to a point. But my one word of caution would be it can be a trap, because what can happen is if that becomes the main thing you're focused on,
Yeah.
you're never going to be a great surgeon. I hate to say that, but that's my opinion.
Right.
Yeah. So you can't just focus on externals, and you can't follow the hot trend, because you know what it's going to do? It's going to burn you, because if you want to pluck all the fat out of young faces, not to pick on one particular operation, very often you're doing that person a disservice.
Yeah.
And another word I absolutely hate is snatched. I think it's terrible because it's destroying, especially in the face, the
Yeah.
character of the face. And sometimes those faces don't move right,
Yeah.
you know. So I don't know. It just depends on how you want to look at things. That's my approach.
Yeah. Well, I want to say a big thank you for being on the Digital Handshake podcast with us. You've shared some great words of wisdom over the many years of you've been practicing, and I know our audience is going to benefit from those. And we want to thank our sponsor, Media PSC, for making this podcast available. And again, say thank you to Dr. John Cook from Chicago, Illinois, for being with us on this episode.